How are you? Here, wait, let's clean.
Doing great. Doing great. So I did see, so we're going to talk about standard 3 first,
Okay.
so we can get that out of the way.
Okay.
I did see your video, and I thought it was a good lesson, very interactive, which was perfect for standard 3. I saw that you used lots of positive and motivational phrases with your students. Good job as they were coming up to the board and participating. Definitely show that you respect your students' opinions and their ideas. And it's almost like there's an expectation that you have for them, even though some of them may not follow it all the time. But you do have that expectation there. So I was happy to see that your interactions were positive. And I could clearly see that you wanted what was best for your students. So good job there. Collaboration for safe learning environment, I would definitely give you a 4 outstanding for that one, that element. Student-centered classroom. I like, again, what I like about standard 3 is all of them kind of build on each other, all the elements.
Yeah.
But you actually started off by doing a review on the one-step equation process that you did. And you got the students moving this time. They were up at the board. They were trying to work out the problems. By the way, how long ago was it that you had introduced this particular skill?
The very last class. So 2 classes ago we did addition and subtraction, and then the last class we did multiplication and division, and then we did a review because it was the very last class before break.
Okay.
Yeah.
They seem pretty eager to get up to the board and work out those problems. So I thought that was very good. I would consider that a high level of student engagement. And then you had the student to actually explain his problem. One student. So did every student do that?
I actually ended up missing one student because the problem that they did was very close to another one. But then after the video was stopped, I had them come up and explain it. So, and actually that ended up being something that I ended up adding. I don't know if you saw it in my reflection, but the very first time I did it, I was the one that ended up explaining them, all the problems. And then when I had to re-record the video because my video originally cut out, then I said, I don't want to do this. I'm going to have you do it. And then that seemed to kind of help with their understanding. And so I just pressed them for like why they did a certain step or whatever.
Right. Okay. So was that the only activity that you actually had with your students?
So we ended up doing a few Chromebook games. And that was also something that wasn't really shown in the video. So before I realized the video cut out, we spent about 15 or so minutes playing different games. There was like a basketball one, a soccer one. There was a counting or like a store one kind of. And then there's a few other that I'll probably introduce within the coming lessons for them to practice. There's like a battleship one where they are like answering equations. So all of the games were pretty much based around the same things, but they could do them with partners on their Chromebooks. And so we spent about 15 minutes doing that. And then we just had like a little bit of free time just because it's hard to motivate students right before they're about to go off for 2 weeks.
Before they getting ready to go off where?
It was spring break. So everybody's on spring break right now, and that was the very last class. And I think I was the only, according to my coworkers, I was one of the only teachers that actually pushed content that day instead of having a complete free day.
Okay. So with that more explanation, then I would probably students in the classroom would definitely be an outstanding for that. Managing learning environment. How did you feel about that part?
I feel like I do okay with the particular class that I was recording, because I was planning on only sending you pre-algebra classes, but I ran out of class periods because we had a few activities that we just needed to do for MYP that just weren't really appropriate for recording. So this was a 7th grade class, and for their class, they are so much more engaged, and it's easier to kind of manage their learning situations because they're still kind of at the age where they want to impress me and they're willing to do things. And there's also just more of an even number of boys and girls, and so there's a healthy sense of competition between both genders. Whereas for all of the other classes, it's very much just like all the boys just want to do, and then there's just 2 girls that just kind of sit there. So for this particular class, I feel like I do a pretty decent job. But for the class that I usually send you, it's just all about trying to control as many students as possible, and it doesn't always work well.
Right. So yeah, well, with this video, you got a proficient there. So I think you organized your time really well, and you were very confident of the activities that you were doing with the students, and they knew what the expectations were. So you maximized that whole time for that particular lesson. You didn't get an outstanding there because I didn't see a lot of allocating and coordination of the resources of your of certain resources. You mentioned the Chromebooks and the interaction. I just wish I would have been able to see just a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And any grouping that you could have done that would have probably put you at an outstanding. So just think about those things when you consider doing this lesson again with another group.
Okay.
I heard lots of verbal communication. Tell me a little bit more about your nonverbal.
Nonverbal, in terms of behavior management, I have a lot of looks that I give to the students. My looks are mainly reserved for students that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. I don't really know how to describe it, but a lot of people kind of describe it as like a little bit of like a glare, if you will. But usually when I give that glare to students, they stop what they're doing. I also smile a lot. I use a lot of like shoulder touches. And I think one thing that I try to do is like I'll just kind of come behind them and see what they're doing, and then I do a lot of nodding. I think that's pretty much it. I don't really have a lot of like special things that I do, but
and like tapping on the desk or
sometimes I do, but for the students, for the pre-algebra class, tapping doesn't really, like, I'll walk around, but a lot of times, especially if I'm teaching new content, I sit in front of the dot cam, and I don't actually start moving until they are doing an activity. And then when they're doing an activity, they're hopefully also moving. So I think that's one thing that I need to work on, and that I'm kind of struggling with on how to do that, how to teach them new things without drawing an example on the dot cam or using the whiteboard. And then if I see someone out of hand, then I'll usually kind of give them a look, or I'll just call out their name and say, "What are you doing? Is that what we need to be doing right now?" And they're not a class that really minds the attention. They just they'll go with it. Sometimes they don't hear me because they're not very good listeners, I guess.
Okay. And we'll come back to that after we do the last element.
Okay.
Discuss your classroom management technique. And promote safe technology use, interactive global or local program with students. I like the Chromebook idea. I like that was very interactive with your students. And what they were working on, was it the one-step equation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was one-step equations with all 4 elements.
See, I would have loved to seen that on video, even though you talked about it in your reflection. It just would have helped to see that
Yeah.
as well too. So I definitely gave you proficient there. Because outstanding says it goes beyond the classroom to local and global communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're more focused on the curriculum at your particular school, which was what you're supposed to do. But
Yeah.
you could have added maybe, it's just been creative with adding something from maybe a career that another career choice, linking it to a career choice that's actually used one-step equations.
Okay.
Maybe from the States or from France, or just making it a global perspective.
Yeah. Okay. I understand.
So definitely got proficient there. So
Okay.
all right. So tell me a little bit about your, and then you can stop it here when you submit to Maureen. About your classroom management checklist. Are